All right. Welcome to the S.E.M podcast. Jack Bryce here with Zack Hewlett again as your host. And tonight we're joined by Richard McConkie, the famous Richard McConkie, I think would be the right way to introduce him.
Yeah, hi guys.
If you're viewing this on YouTube, all you get is the lovely picture of Richard's family when he talks. But he said that's better for all of us. I don't know about that, but
he's been horribly mangled. Just kidding.
Well, this, being off camera allows me to be a little more free,
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right.
You're gonna get the best.
Not wearing any pants.
You're gonna get the best quality content this way.
All right. So we'll follow our usual format, Richard. If you want to talk about, how you came about the mission, getting your call, any story about that, and then we'll skip over, talk about what you've been up to since, and then we'll go back and reminisce.
Yeah, sure. So I think for me the lead up stuff is probably a lot less interesting because some people who you guys have had on had these really interesting stories. Like they didn't know. Like John O'Brien, he like left the same day or something. He got his call or something like that. Or there's a lot of
extreme. That was an extreme example.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
For me though, it was just I was always going to go on a mission. I had, 3 older siblings that had gone on missions at that point, and then 2 more went after me. Yeah, so it was always just it was always in the plan, and I was always excited to go. So it went through the normal routine. I mean, I think after high school had gone to like 1 semester of community college or something, and then got the call. And I guess the one little like interesting anecdote from that was, in my family, we usually do basically like a family home evening when we get the call, and the person, I think we all like would normally like dress up sort of, like Sunday best. And I happened to just be wearing a tartan tie. Like I had no idea, but I was wearing a tartan tie when I opened it. So I thought that was kind of cool. Even in the moment, I was like, whoa. So
yeah, that is cool. Yeah.
And then I know there's sort of like a thing. A lot of people mentioned they didn't know how to pronounce Edinburgh, but I actually did. I think my uncle had actually been the mission president there, like in the 90s, early 90s. So I think I'd heard about it from his family, and then maybe just watching like British TV or something. I'd heard the name, like I was kind of aware of it already. I didn't know much, but yeah, I kind of knew already how to say it at least.
That's good.
Yeah,
better than most of us.
Yeah.
And what was the timing of getting your call? Month, year?
Oh, it was I don't remember exactly when I got it, but it was like not a long wait. It was like, what's like standard, like 2 months or something, like 2 months from call to leaving. I left in June, so it was probably like April or something like that. I don't quite remember. Okay. But yeah, it wasn't like an unusually long or short waiting period. So that
June
was all.
2005?
Yeah, June of 2005. Yeah, so that was all like kind of uneventful. Just sort of like I always knew I was going to go, and I went. And then like from there, you guys jumped to after mission, right?
Yep.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
So when you got back, tell us what you've been up to.
Yeah. So I got back. So June of 2007. I think I don't know if you guys had to do this or some people had to do this where they had to leave like 2 days before their visa or something like that. So I left on like June 21st, but then came home 2 years later on like June 19th, I think. But then, yeah, I think I got a job at a call center where my brother was working, which is like, I guess, a rite of passage if you're a young person to work at a call center, collecting debt for like Gold's Gym memberships or something. It was like kind of a surreal job, but
that's pretty cliche.
Yeah, calling people around the country and telling them they owe money on their Gold's Gym membership. And then I went to Salt Lake Community College for a while. And my mom, she had been like, she's like, well, go to Salt Lake Community College, but then go to the University of Utah for Institute, because she just, I don't know. I guess she just had like, an instinct or an inspiration that would be like a good idea. So I went to Salt Lake Community, but then I did Institute at the U. And then, of course, I guess this is like closing the loop on that inspiration, but that's where I met my wife. She was just, sitting at a table one day, and I had all that like post-mission confidence. So I just went up and talked to her, and that's the way it went. And I think, like, and like, I guess kind of joke about like the post-mission confidence, but it's real. Like you wouldn't, I don't know if I would have just like gone up to a pretty girl and, and just hit it off like that without having that mission experience. Some guys obviously would have, but mission definitely helped me in that regard.
Awesome.
And then I transferred to the U. She was already up there on like a full scholarship, and so I transferred there. We got married after dating not that long. Like, so my dad was actually going to be a mission president himself. Like, I think exactly like 1 year after I left, or after I got home. So yeah, I met my wife like the week of Thanksgiving 2007, and we did what we needed to do to hurry up and get married before my parents left in like summer of 2008. So we were married pretty quick. And then we were in Salt Lake for a while, and trying to remember the order of events. After we graduated,
what did you study?
Oh, I studied political science and communications, which I later ended up going back to grad school to get an MBA, because I'm not sure like what you do with political science and stuff. But
You go to grad school.
yeah, you go back and get an MBA or law. Most people probably went back and went to law school. But after my undergrad, I went to, my wife and I, like, we'd kind of planned to try and do internships in Europe. Like that was a big thing for us. Like she hadn't traveled abroad. I had for my mission, but she hadn't, but she knew she wanted to. That was like important. And so we looked into like US State Department internships, wherever there's like an embassy, they have these internship programs. So I applied to one in London and ended up getting it. And she applied to one in Brussels and got it. And we were going to do it like back to back. Like we'd do the London one, then we'd go move to Brussels and do that one. So we were in London for like 3 or 4 months. And while we were there, we were able to go back to Scotland, and like we rented a car and drove from London all the way to the top of Scotland. It was really cool. Yeah, I was able to take her to all my areas, meet a lot of the people I'd taught, a lot of the members I'd worked with and stuff. So it was really cool, really amazing. And it's like some people, you go back. Some people go back like a week after or a month after. That's kind of rough. Like I don't, if there's any like future missionaries listening, I don't know if I recommend that because it's like too soon. So it was nice though to go back like I guess this was like 2010, I think. So like 3 years after, like that was a good amount of time because like people, everyone was still there. Everyone still remembers you, but enough has changed that it's interesting. And it's nice, to bring your wife and show her off and show her all the cool places that you got to go.
Nice.
It's good advice. I like that.
Yeah, and then we came back after we were there for about a year in Europe in general. We were both doing internships and traveling, and then we came back and trying to remember. We got some jobs in Salt Lake City. I think we were there for like 2 years, and then we headed out to DC, and we've been here for about 10 years. So I live just outside of DC right now in Maryland, pretty close to the DC temple.
Oh, cool.
All right. And
Yeah,
children.
Yes, and sorry, I'm not thinking very clearly. I don't know. It's the bright spotlight of the S.E.M podcast. So we've got 2 children. I've got Red, who's 6. He's in 1st grade. He's a lot of fun. Then we got his younger brother Henrik, who is 2, and they'll both be 3. Or they'll both like Red will be 7, and Henrik will be 3 pretty soon. They're both a ton of fun, both like wacky, crazy boys. Yeah, and then out here, I've mostly been doing. I did an MBA out here, and I've been doing mostly government contract work, like that, like national security, defense sort of stuff. And Jack, I know you. I think we talked like one time a couple years ago about some. I think you're in kind of a similar space, or have been at times. So
Yeah, I tried to get a job where you work. They didn't want me.
yeah, I'm sorry about that. I mean, they don't. I don't know. I don't know that they. Well, that's you probably
No,
dodged.
I bombed the interview. It was totally. That's totally what it was.
Well, you're in Colorado now, so I think you
Yeah.
did something right. It's I miss the mountains. Yeah, so I've been doing that.
That's
So
great.
it's been pretty good.
My 6-year-old, if we had 2 names picked, one for a boy, one for a girl. So she is a girl and not named Red, but that's what we were going to name her if she was a boy. So that's kind of cool. But
yeah, so in my case, Red is it's a family last name, so it's Red.
double D.
Yeah, because we have ancestors who have ties to Scotland with the last name Red.
Awesome.
It's the best color too, just so everybody's aware.
Yeah. Yeah, great season for the Utes, man. That's been
Yes, it has been fun.
what a week.
But I digress.
Yeah, don't go down that trail with Zack. All right. Well, that's great. Man, I really like that area back there too. Around DC is very beautiful too. Different without the mountains, but still beautiful.
Yeah. It's been good to us for the most part so far. So it's been about 10 years, and maybe we'll see. We'll see how long I make it out here. My wife is probably more. She's got like family in the area. She's a little more tied to the area, but we'll see.
Is she from back there? Or is she from Utah?
She's from Utah, but had like her mom grew up partly out here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So then we go into just into the mission, right?
Yep. Take us back. You can start MTC or in Scotland, whatever you prefer, and we'll just go through area by area and companions that you had, and whatever you want to talk about.
All right. I made like a list because I didn't.
Cheat sheets are allowed.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything. Not that I could forget any of these people, but all right. So I went to Preston MTC like most everyone else. I thought that was really cool to get to go to this different MTC, and you go there and it's kind of like I don't know how you'd say it. It's really nice, right? So it's like in some ways it's almost like this this hotel, like this nice hotel in England or something, and then but it's also sort of like dorms. So it's I don't know. It was it felt really cool though to go there, and you're on the same grounds as the temple, and it's a very beautiful temple. I had a great time there. You got to get to meet all these amazing guys from like Europe and stuff. We had people from like Sweden and Germany and Eastern Europe, and then I think in my group in the MTC, I thought it was a really cool group. We had Elder DePold, of course, McLeod, Borders, Canucci, and Evans. And I think actually I just remembered I was supposed to fly out with Evans, but he lived like pretty far from Salt Lake, and they got stuck in traffic or something and like missed the flight or something. So I think I flew to Chicago like alone, and then there was a bunch of elders there when I got to Chicago. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So then the MTC, I had a really good experience there. There's great teachers and everything. You get acclimated to it's kind of like British accents and stuff. And then you take that, I think, a train up to Edinburgh, and I think the APs when I got there were, I think it was Bradley and Taylor, I want to say.
Sounds right.
Definitely Bradley, I think. And they did that whole like tour with like the fake information and stuff. And Um, I can't remember what it was, but like me and people probably won't believe me when I say this, but like I'm kind of like a joking type of person. Like I'm a class clown. That was like my thing before. But so we had me and McLeod right in the car, and McLeod's like just kind of a natural comedian. Like he probably should be in movies and stuff, doing funny stuff. But so there's me and McLeod there, and like we were like we thought it was like funny, but I think we were like telling even more jokes than they were, and like they were kind of being like, no, don't ruin this for us, this is our like funny tour. And we're like,
You were upstaging the APs, huh?
yeah.
Oh, that's too good.
Yeah. And then then we go to the mission home. I don't remember who all the trainers were, but I was paired off with Elder McDonald, and and he was already in Perth, so we was assigned to Perth. And a lot of people in my family had gone to missions in Australia, so Perth, Australia is a place where a lot of people I know have gone, but I don't think I'd ever even heard of Perth, Scotland. But Perth's a really nice place. But as you guys probably know, there was like not much of a membership base there. They had this like nice building, but I think my first like Sunday there, there was like 6 active members or something, and then there was a bunch of other people, but they were just like support from Dundee, like from the 2 wards in Dundee. They pulled some people aside, and basically their calling was to just go and act like they were in Perth branch.
Okay.
That was like Douglas Murray. I don't know if you guys knew him. He, I think, later was the temple president or in the temple presidency. He was like a spiritual giant sort of guy. But yeah, it was interesting to go to this place. It was like a 6-person branch. It was kind of wild. But McDonald, I mean, he was like a workhorse for sure, which is good. I mean, I was ready to I'd like been prepared, to go on a mission. That was like kind of my whole life had been sort of focused on that. So I was happy to have someone who was just like really obedient. And I had heard like people had kept telling me like, oh, you'll be surprised. Like not every missionary is obedient. And I was like, what? No way. But I got him, and he's very obedient. We worked super hard. It was kind of a tough area. We didn't have, like, when you don't have that many members, it's hard to generate a teaching pool. And but he was extremely diligent. We were hitting the pavement every day and doing a lot of GQing, which for anyone not familiar is just talking to people on the street. And we ended up being together for a long time, especially for like a trainer and trainee dynamic. I think we were together 3 transfers. And I think I was a bit of like a know-it-all, so it was like kind of hard for him to have this like know-it-all trainee. Yeah, so I think we found a lot of stuff to like laugh about. Tons of like weird inside jokes just based on like the weird interactions we would have every day with just people we'd come across. But yeah, I think that was kind of tough to be with your trainee for 3 transfers. I'm trying to think like, and we also had, I don't think I've heard anyone mention them, but the Brazees, had you guys heard of them? Senior couple.
Yeah, I remember them.
Yeah, they were really good. They came partway through, like maybe my second transfer there or something, and that was really nice to have, like the senior couple who just very reassuring and just like, hey, this branch is tough, like, but we're here to help. And so I kind of consider people like that like honorary companions, like so like McDonald was my trainer, but they were kind of like companions too. Yeah, they were really cool. And I think
were they proselyting, or were they were doing something else?
I guess they were proselyting. They didn't have like they weren't like family history or anything like that.
Yeah,
they're basically just like there to support the branch. Cool. And he, I think, had been like a superintendent of schools or something somewhere in Utah. So he's a really smart guy. and knew a lot about like education and like different ways of like engaging people. So he had a lot of valuable stuff to say. And he had actually been a missionary as well in Scotland in the 60s, or 70s, probably 60s, I think. But so he knew a ton of people, like a ton of random people, and he would like sometimes come across people that he kind of remembered and stuff. So it was
That's cool.
pretty crazy.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah. And then a couple of people I've heard who've come on the show served in Perth. I don't think I've heard anyone mention the Crooks, but that's like this really interesting family. Tom Crook and Ann Crook. I think they had joined the church in the 60s or 50s or something. And he had kind of had a lot of status in the Church of Scotland. So it was kind of like a controversy when he joined. Like it was in the local papers and stuff, and people were upset with him. But they were really cool. Really just like those kind of like anchor members who make a huge difference in those areas. And it's like takes a lot of dedication to be like that anchor for so long.
Yeah, they were probably a rarity as far as people that were so, inundated or surrounded by the people in their area where they lived. And being prominent members of whatever you said Church of Scotland prior to joining the church. I mean, there were so many that we've already talked to missionaries who've mentioned instances where they've taught people or met with people that didn't decide to join the church, but had some sort of a spiritual experience that, they kudos to them, because that's a big deal.
Yeah, it was. And actually, I mean, I think Elder Brzee had known Tom Crook back in the day when he was a young missionary. So,
Wow.
So yeah, they really held things down for a long time. And trying to think of some of the investigators we had there. Elder McDonald and I think they were already teaching this woman when I got there, but there's an older woman named Muriel Mitchell. That was like my first like real investigator. And we taught her, and she was like a champ at reading the Book of Mormon. She like read it every day. That was her thing. Like that became her thing in her old age. She found a lot of comfort in doing that, and she wanted to get baptized, and she was baptized. I think Elder McDonald did it, and it seems like this happens a lot. Maybe we need better font technology or something, but she had to do it like 4 or 5 times. It was like, you had to try and baptize her like 4 or 5 times. So it was kind of sad because she's this frail old lady, and it was not an easy one. But there's a really funny story in her before she got baptized. Her interview, I think it was Elder. Oh no, it was before the interview. We were doing like an interview prep, and we were walking through the questions with her just to make sure she knew what was going to be asked. And there's a question about abortions, which if the person being interviewed has had an abortion in the past, their interview gets escalated to the first presidency, I think. And
Just mission president.
okay,
I had
yeah,
one of those.
Yeah. So we're reading through the questions, and she's like, "Oh, yeah, I had an abortion," and we're like, "Okay, so we'll go talk to our leaders and figure out the next steps." And then, I think it was President Vriens must have just been like, "Okay, well, get the story from her," or I think he at that point he had the zone leaders come. I think it was Elder Clausen. So if you ever have him on, he hopefully he remembers the story because it was pretty memorable. But I think President Vriens is like, well, have the zone leaders come in and interview her, but when it comes to this issue of the abortion, have her talk through kind of the situation, what was going on that led to that. And she explains it. She starts telling the story, and she's like, I was a teenager, I got pregnant, and then I had my son, and I put him up for abortion. And we're like, wait,
Oh man.
Muriel, do you mean adoption? And she's like, oh, yeah, I guess I do. I guess I mean adoption. And we had all this like heartache over what was turned out not to be an issue.
Actually, every female I interviewed in Scotland had an abortion.
Mm,
So each time I had to call President Vriens, and then it was just determining if they were repentant,
yeah,
which all of them were.
yeah,
But yeah, that's quite the confusion though. Abortion,
yeah.
adoption.
And that wasn't even a comment on her like cognitive condition. She just
Yeah.
that one word she just got confused and just yeah. I mean, otherwise she was all there. She wasn't she didn't have confusion like that on really any other issue. But
Jeez.
and then there was another. I'll just go down some other investigators that were like, kind of important to that time. There was a woman, Mary Harding, who was there with she'd married an Italian man, and she was English. I'm not sure how they ended up in Scotland, but we just met her one night on the street, and she ended up taking the lessons, getting baptized, still keep in contact with her. She's just a really delightful person. And then there was who was you guys had someone on recently? I think it was I can't remember who, but they were talking about Rhoda Mackay's baptism in Perth. I think it was McDonald and I who'd found Rhoda, and that was kind of a weird scenario. We spent like all of our time knocking on doors in Perth, or just stopping people on the street. And one day we, instead of just like knocking in any sort of coherent pattern, I think we had felt moved upon to just kind of knock just whatever door. Like, not, it wasn't the most efficient, but we were just kind of skipping a bunch of doors and just going to whichever ones we kind of felt inspired to knock on. And that's how we found Rhoda. We wouldn't have found her otherwise, because we would have just, is a big area, and we just probably wouldn't have knocked into her. So that was interesting. And she oh yeah, I remember, I can't remember who it was, but Rhoda was the one. Someone was telling a story about the smoking plan, where they gave her a blessing and she was able to hold off on smoking. Do you guys remember who it was? Someone was talking about this.
I remember the story. I'm trying to remember who that was.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember too. Was it someone older or younger than you?
I think younger, and it was a couple weeks ago or something. It was within the last couple weeks, I think. But
Right.
but anyway, that was kind of where Rhoda came from, and that's cool conclusion to her story.
Yeah.
And then there's this other guy, and maybe if someone listening has run into him, I would love to regain contact. There's this guy, John McIntosh, who we were teaching, and he was really like excited about the church, but he never got baptized, and he was kind of a wanderer. Like, he would kind of disappear, go to like up to Inverness. He had family in Inverness or something like that, and he was like really like, I felt like a really strong friendship with John. Like, I felt like he was someone I was really meant to know. And he was really funny. He'd always talk. He kept having these like experiences in his life where it was like God was very obviously talking to him and nudging him into the church. Like I say though, I don't think he ever got baptized. But if someone knows John McIntosh, he would have been, the time we were there, he was probably mid to late 30s. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You'd know him if you had met him if you were in Perth. He was just a very funny guy. Yeah, and then those were kind of the main people we were teaching back then. There's one woman, Wilma Mackay. She never joined, but she's someone I've been able to keep in contact with. And I even took my wife to meet her. She was a nice woman. Let's see. Oh, one really cool thing. If you have McDonald on, he probably remembers this too. The branch president was this guy named Bob Watford. It was like this really classy English guy, and And I think McDonald really liked tennis, and Bob Watford liked tennis too. And he might have even been from the area where Wimbledon is. But yeah, like I say, really classy English guy. And I guess he, well, anyway, one day he invited us up to like his house on Loch Tummel. And so we went up there one day and like chopped some wood, and it was incredible. Like people would pay probably thousands for this experience just to like go to this really beautiful um, house, the Scottish house on the banks of Loch Tummel, which was in just a little bit north of Perth. But yeah, it was amazing. Help him out on his land for a couple hours, and he cooked us this like great meal, and a really cool place. So look up Loch Tummel if you're going to Scotland for fun.
Right. Sounds cool.
Yeah, super. And that's the thing. Like you go on a mission, and stuff like that happens, and you wouldn't, that wouldn't. Experiences like that just don't happen if you stay home, obviously, and or if you aren't putting yourself out there. And that's something I actually really wanted to like talk about on your podcast was like missions are obviously can be really challenging, but the main thing like I think back on my mission is just that it was fun. Like now I realize some people don't have that experience. Some people just have things go wrong and it's not fun. Or it's just not suited to their personality, and it's like a continual struggle. But for me, I mean, it was fun. Like the work was fun. Even like not having success was fun. Success was fun. And then you get random things like getting to go to some guy's cool house on Loch Tummel. So just missions are fun. And if people listening are like young men, particularly thinking about like whether to go, think about it. It's like a unique opportunity to go and hang out with your bros and work hard for something important. And I just like I hear a lot of like for some reason I don't hear that communicated enough from I feel like that should be communicated more from a lot of return missionaries. It's just how fun it was. Like when they get around their other missionaries, like when like on this podcast, you can obviously tell how fun it was, but when they're talking to kind of people who weren't there, that doesn't always come across.
Right. That's a good point. And you have experiences like that you'd never have any other way. Even if you visited Scotland as a tourist or whatever, you'd never just happen upon that loch.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
or if you did, you have
the other
to
point
pay
to say to it too, Richard, is the fact that there's a lot of missionaries that had like that anxiety of being a missionary that tended to override some of those fun experiences. We're also focused on the exact obedience that was preached by President Vriens and President Fredrick after he'd gone home. And so sometimes those fun moments were a little bit less fun just because of the nature of why we were together. I think in some people's minds, I mean, I can speak to that for myself, where there was a few instances where I just was like, okay, I understand that we're having this activity, but eventually I'm going to have to go back to the flat. I'm going to have to get dressed. I'm going to have to go chap doors and, get back to work. And, unfortunately in that moment, I wish it was the opposite, where I would have just said, forget about what's later, like live in the moment and focus on what is there. But, it tended to happen, at least to me. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but from my experience, that definitely happened a few times.
Yeah, I've been looking in journals in prep for this call, and something I wrote down a bunch, which I feel a little silly about now, but I kept writing stuff like, oh, we went and did this thing and it took too long. I went and did this thing and it took too long, or we were there too late or something. And I was very like conscientious about, being not staying too, like you were not staying too long or whatever at a dinner appointment or stuff like that. But reading my journals, I was like, I was probably a little too worried in a lot of ways. Yeah, like I don't like not that I regret like following rules pretty closely, but but if there was like something happening, like I probably should have not worried so much about like how long it took or something. Yeah, let's see.
Hindsight is always perfectly 2020.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I was with McDonald for the first 4.5 months in Perth, and then he got called out. I think maybe he got called to be a zone leader somewhere or something. I can't remember where he went, but he was replaced by Elder Bird, and Bird was really good for me. We were only ended up being together like 4 weeks because there was like it was the full 6 weeks, but we had a situation where someone was transferred into our companionship, and it was like also coming up on Christmas, and like that last 2 weeks kind of got wrecked. Like wasn't much happening at that point, but Bird was really awesome. He was really really good at teaching for like multiple levels of understanding. He could keep the attention of like a child and an adult at the same time. He was just a really charismatic guy, really funny. People took to him really quickly. I wish I had been able to serve with him longer. I felt like I learned a lot in a short amount of time. But I would love to hear him on this podcast. Any luck? Have you heard from him or anything? Have you reached out?
We've reached out to both Cameron and Sean and have yet to hear back from them. So if you have contact, we would love a referral.
I don't think I do. I've not been that good about like maintaining contact. Just like Facebook friends. That's it. But yeah, they should both come on.
Yeah.
That's so
come on, Sean.
Bird.
You got one of my favorite anyway, Sister Vriens stories. So if you're listening, come on here.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, like I say, we had that. There was an emergency transfer into our companionship, and then I left right before Christmas to train, and whitewash into Bridge of Dawn, and then, so I went down to Edinburgh, picked up Elder Hess, and I listened to his episode. It was really good. He told a story about driving on like the highway the wrong side. True story.
Yeah.
I have no explanation. I just drove on the wrong side. And like, I guess we almost died, but, we didn't.
Did you have a car in Perth?
Yeah, I had driven plenty. I
Okay.
never got like, and I'm not even, I would say I was like a pretty safe driver, pretty good. But, but for whatever reason, going up north, like it was like late at night for something. At some point, I just like got on the wrong entrance or something, and it was like a while, and we didn't see anyone for a while, and then we finally did. But I don't know, crazy story. Yeah. So that was pretty unfair to Brady Hess. To his like first like hour in the mission, he's almost like hit head on going 80 miles an hour. Yeah. So we go up to Bridge of Dawn. We're whitewashing in. I think we're replacing O'Brien and Jump or something, or O'Brien and someone else. And that was Bridge of Dawn was easily my toughest period because I was training, whitewashing. It was the middle of winter. We got to our flat on like December 23rd or 22nd or something. The members had arranged, for us to come over and do stuff. So that was nice. But it was a little rough. And it's like Aberdeen in the middle of the winter. I think I Googled it the other day. Sunset's like 3:30, so it's crazy. And then also, so my brother back a couple years earlier had gotten cancer, and he had part of his hand amputated where the cancer was. And unfortunately, when I was in Bridge of Dawn, I learned that his cancer had come back. So that would kind of like, I think I might have learned on Christmas or about that time. So or maybe it was a couple weeks after that. But yeah, Bridge of Dawn ended up being kind of a rough place. I mean, I liked Aberdeen, and the ward was pretty good, but yeah, just all that stuff going on. I also got really sick. Um, I got this like infection in my throat, and there was like days I couldn't talk and I couldn't eat. And the NHS is, I mean, I don't want to bag on it. I mean, it's like pretty good for some stuff, but like, I think like Sister Vriens told me to call. She told me to call, like, don't they call it a surgery there or something, which is like urgent care or whatever.
Right.
And those people were just like, gargle salt water. I'm like, okay. And then I was doing stuff like that, and like nothing was helping. Finally, a member was just like, just go to the A&E, as they call it over there. I go to the A&E, and for any non Scots listening, that's the ER. I go to the ER, and I finally get in, and I they prescribed me some stuff. The doctor there like got mad at me. He's like, why are you wasting A&E resources? This is something you should have handled at a local surgery. I'm like, you're welcome, thanks, whatever. But I was sick for like 3 weeks in a row. It was terrible.
Okay, wow.
So I mean, I'm complaining here, but I'm just setting the stage for like that was like not that was just kind of not an ideal
Rough time.
Yeah. But there was a lot of good stuff too. I mean, a lot of interesting met a lot of interesting people. I think it might have been O'Brien who baptized, or maybe it was a few people before, but there was this young guy, Greg Sinclair. And if anyone knows where Greg is, I've been trying to track him down I try like every year for the last 10 years. I found a guy in like Dubai who's a lawyer. I think it's him, but he won't respond to my LinkedIn messages. But yeah, Craig Sinclair was this recent convert. Really cool guy, really smart. He was an academic. And we hit it off. I think we were, kind of like we would have been buds under any other context as well. And I think, and Hess talked quite a bit about this. He struggled, that guy struggled with, just transitioning into the life of being a church member, and leaving old stuff behind. But he was doing a good job, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he stuck with it or not. I just would love to track him down. If anyone knows where he is, Greg Sinclair, who was in Aberdeen. Yeah, and then of course there's some great members in Bridge of Dawn. The Williams family. So I had actually been in the MTC with Danny Williams, who was going on his mission to Ireland, but he was from the Bridge of Dawn ward. So I already knew their son.
Pretty cool. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and so they had us over to their house for Christmas and stuff. And then Danny ended up coming home early because I think he had needed knee surgery. So he was there too. So suddenly this guy I knew from the MTC was like going on joint teaches with me. So that was pretty cool. And then there was the Gilmore family, of course. And they were great. We didn't get to know them as much. I mean, I think when I was there, they had to temporarily move into some apartment or something like that. So they couldn't really have us over and stuff, but yeah, they were a great family. Yeah, I'm trying to, I'm wondering if I should get into this. There was one of probably the weirdest investigator lessons of my mission. I think the area book had this guy in there, and I think it might have even said like, don't bother, like don't go there. It's not a good situation. But I think we went there anyway. And like we really shouldn't have. Like he was we weren't in physical danger, but it was a very weird environment. And I won't get into it here because it's kind of gross, but he said some things that were like really creepy. And man, that was I guess a lesson there is, trust the area book.
So he went back and put a star next to the note.
Yeah, actually,
really,
do not go.
Really don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Scared to the 15th power.
Mm-hmm. And Hess got into this, but like there was a good group in Aberdeen of was like Midgley and Lineker and Barber and Zinkowski. And Midgley was kind of like, he's kind of like the. Is he coming on, by the way?
Yes, in the future.
He was kind of like the I don't know, like the tour guide. Like he would organize stuff and get everyone out there. He like knew where the cool stuff was, so he took us to these. I think it was called the Brno Vat, which was like this waterfall you can go and stand behind, and some like took us to some stone circles and sand dunes and stuff like that. It was really cool. So there was a lot of good guys up there, which I was really like relieved for Elder Hess that there was like all these fun people, because I'm like sick. I don't know what I'm doing. I almost got in a car crash. So I'm glad there's all these fun people here to like make this not too rough for you. And Elder Hess told that story about the spitting. That story I think is not true, because so for the folks at home, Elder Hess said that one day we got back to the flat and I'm like, Elder Hess, you spit 88 times today. Well, that story's not true, because it was actually like 100. Actually, I'm just kidding. I actually don't remember that. I do remember that he spit. And I do remember like I told him not to, but that was just like, I was just like, people might notice that, or people are noticing that. So don't do it. But I probably was a jerk about it. I don't know. I did not sound very good in that story, but that's okay.
That was a perfect example of how training is hard, because I trained in that same group. I trained Elder Marsh, and it was not an easy transition to go from just a, mind your business, do the best that you can missionary, to now being like the forefront example of this new missionary. It wasn't easy.
Yeah, and Brady Hess has like this really strong motor. Like he's got energy, and I'm like, how do I like direct this energy to something useful? Because I don't know what's like the best thing to do here. Of course, there's always like going door to door, but is that really the best thing? That's like we know it's not. But so I think I worked with Zinkowski on doing like an English class for Russian speakers, but like I think that was hard for Hess, because he's like, I got to get out there and do stuff, and it's like, we can't be sitting around like planning this like English class or whatever. That's not what a mission is. So
right.
Yeah. Oh, then I mean, Zinkowski's kind of an important part of the story up there too. So I kind of consider him like a honorary companion, because and Elder Hess got into this, but we would, no secret, him and Barbara didn't get along, and so he would just like we'd just do exchanges like all the time, like sometimes multiple days or something, and that was like the President Vriens like was basically telling us to, and like and as they talked about, as Brady talked about, like President Vriens tried to move Zinkowski, tried to just switch Zinkowski and Hess, and Zinkowski said no, which I don't know why he said no, because we ended up we'd still be together all the time anyway. But
he didn't want to move his stuff.
Yeah. and as we know, Zinkowski's like possibly the most famous person from our mission now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen his like Instagram and stuff, but he's out there doing collecting food for the war-torn nation of Ukraine. So pretty crazy,
delivering it like the savior that he is.
So, yeah, it's a really interesting story. Interesting how people turn up later in life as doing these important things. That's kind of the main stuff that was going on in Bridge of Dawn. I only reading through my journal, we had a bunch of investigators, but only one that was really serious. It was this lady from Nigeria. I think her name was like Amaya, and we had her. She'd come to church a bunch. She was planning to be baptized, and then one day she just like called us and left this cryptic message, and we could never really track her down again. I think did you ever do the thing where you like called someone from a different number and like then they finally answer and then,
yep.
and then so we did that, and then she she just gave us some cryptic response, and that was the end of it.
It's too bad.
So from there, I got called. I think Hess stayed and Ford replaced me. And then I went down to Alloa. And before I got to Alloa, Bird had been in Alloa at some point in the past, and Ford had been down there, and I knew Ford and stuff. So those guys told me a bunch about it. And Alloa is like, have either of you ever been there or served there?
I was the district leader over at one of his sister's area.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how to put it. Alloa is like this kind of, it's just got its own thing going on. It's like everyone there is just a little different, and not in like a bad way. It's just like they're just got their own weird little culture in Alloa. And I was with Oliver, and I bet if you like did a survey of like the people's most beloved companions, Oliver's got to be like number one. Just this very pleasant guy who easy to get along with, super observant. Like he notices like all these things, really good at listening. He's a little quiet, but like we get back at the end of the day and like he had all these really insightful things to say about our appointments and stuff. Just super easy to work with. And he and I have talked a bunch throughout the years, so I'm really grateful for that friendship. But I was only with him for 6 weeks. Would have been great to do at least 2 transfers, but then he was replaced by. Well, actually, let me look real quick. Yeah, I have my notes. Talk about the guy who said "dude" all the time. Well, only Donovan Oliver will think this is funny, but there was this guy who we saw everywhere, and he would just say "dude, dude." He loved us. We don't exactly know why, but Elder Oliver, come on the podcast and tell us about the dude guy. And then he was replaced by Elder Marsh. He's probably coming right from you, Zack. But Marsh was like kind of like, it was almost the same as like serving with Brady Hess again, just like high energy.
Right.
Wanted to get out there, wanted to do stuff, really friendly. And I think we had that's kind of the time where I think I first started to have some like real success. We had a couple of baptisms there. A guy named Doug McCrae, who I was able to see when I went back. And he made fun of me for gaining weight, which was very nice of him. And then there's this guy, David. I think those are the 2 baptisms we had there, Doug and David. Great members in Alloa. Like you guys know Elder Kerr, right? I mean, he was in the Sterling area, but Stephen Kerr and his family. Oh, that guy is really powerful speaker, really powerful singer. I don't know if you remember, but he would like sing like the loudest dude you'd ever heard. Like at any meeting where he was at, you could hear him singing. And he's maybe not a natural singer, but he wasn't gonna let that hold him back. But he was like, was a great leader. He was a master with the scriptures and stuff. It was really great to serve in Elder Kerr's ward. And then there was there's a guy there, Brian Quinn, who was like a recent convert. I think anyone who served in Alloa knows Brian Quinn. He's like another one of these Alloa people. Alloa just produced the most interesting people. Brian was like everywhere. Anywhere we'd go in town, like we'd see Brian. He knew everyone in town. He was like, he's like 17 or 18, but he was like this main like social connector piece of all of Alloa. Every single person there seemed to know him somehow. I think he actually ended up running for like city council or whatever, something, and I think he lost. But and he went on a mission too, like after like around the time I was there, and then he ended up serving in my younger brother's mission. I don't think they were companions, but they knew each other pretty well. Let's see. That was kind of the main stuff in Alloa. Interesting place. It's probably not a place for tourists to go. It's doesn't look very nice, but but it's really interesting. Oh, actually, in Alloa, there was Mandy Watson. I don't know if you guys knew about her, but she was restoring this like old. She was a member in the ward, and she was restoring this old mansion. And missionaries would help on the restoration project here and there. So we did a few things, and then when I went back with my wife, it was I mean she was basically done. It was like this amazing old Scottish mansion, um, and she let us stay there. It was a lot of fun, really cool.
Chad Bockham claimed that the best fish and chip shop in all of Scotland was in Alloa. Can you?
Yeah, I think I know which one he was talking about too. One weird thing is like I don't know why, because I love like fast food, but like I didn't eat out like ever in Scotland, like fewer than like 20 times. I don't know why. Like I thought I had to save money or something, but I think I went there like once. But yeah, it was good.
He sent it to me. It's called Falcon Fish and Chicken Bar and Pizzeria.
Yeah, I think I looked it up when he was on the podcast, and yes, I remembered it, and I had been there. But yeah, Alloa, it's a place of surprises. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Then from Alloa, I guess. Oh, I guess I forgot. I was the district leader in Alloa, which was a lot of fun. I'm trying to remember if there's anything like relevant, but I don't know. So from there, I went to Irvine with Tobias Megner, and with Megner, everyone because he's German, everyone when you talk about Megner, everyone goes, "Oh yeah, German efficiency," and that's like kind of true, but he's just a very warm guy. He's very nice. I like I wouldn't even say he's like particularly like you know I don't know. I guess I'm trying to say the German efficiency thing. Maybe not totally accurate. I think there's so much more going on there. He's just such a nice guy, warm guy, very thoughtful guy. And then listening to his interview was very, I didn't realize so much. Like there was so much stuff going on there. I think that was hard for him. Learning, trying to teach in English and stuff. I didn't realize how hard it was for him. So it was interesting to hear. I mean, I had a great time with him. But yeah, I never realized like just how maybe stressed out he was from just doing things that were not natural to his nature, like they weren't his personality or something. But he was a great missionary. Just worked incredibly hard, and he did a great job like connecting with people, even though it was not, I think, what he wanted to be doing. But yeah, he was great. And he's also he taught me how to make like a proper meal out of like hot dogs, because he's like, no, you got to get like the really nice rolls. Like you don't just buy some stupid hot dog bun. You got to get a nice roll, and you got to get like the good like brown mustard and stuff, like whatever Germans eat. And like to this day, I like only eat like the finest mustards because of my time with him.
That's too good.
But yeah, like he made a plate. It's like we got some sauerkraut, we got some mustards and like curry ketchup and stuff. It was good.
I'm just laughing because I could see it. Having spent his last 6 weeks of his mission together in Aberdeen, that's very much. Yeah. He wasn't about to just let it slide. He's going to tell you how it should be.
Yeah.
I love Tobias. He's awesome.
Yeah, very cool guy. Okay, so now I was only with him for 6 weeks, and as like a new zone leader, but he was a great companion. but then, and I guess, we've been going like an hour, and I'm just now getting to Martin, which is like a defining period of my life, and not even, not trying to be like, overly dramatic or anything, but it's very important. Yeah, just, working with him, opened up a lot of ideas about like missionary work and how to do it better. We weren't very similar, but I just think we had a similar, we were similarly motivated to succeed, and to like really make a difference, like actually feel like things were better than when we got there. And yeah, it just worked really well. And I ended up serving with him for all but one of my remaining transfers. So I think we were together ultimately like 11 months or something, or 10 months or something.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. He was really strong with people one-on-one. Like the ward, just like everyone loved him, especially the youth. They love, they love to like tease him, about being from Northern England and all that. But ultimately, it's like there was such like a kinship between I guess, Scottish people and Al Martin, because how a lot of Scottish people could be about English people, but they, for whatever reason, they saw Al as just very much like as one of them, which was very helpful in missionary work. Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to there's a lot for me to say here, so I'm just trying to organize my thoughts a little bit in real time. Yeah, he really lit like the youth on fire in that in the Irvin ward. They all, like, he was really good at making like the right thing seem really cool. And doing the right thing is cool, of course, we know that as adults, but when you're young, you don't know that. But he really helped the youth. Like, he really helped frame doing the right thing, like, going to church, taking it seriously, reading your scriptures, telling your friends about the gospel. Like, he made that stuff seem very doable. He coached the youth on like how to do that. And they like really valued his encouragement. Like, they really wanted to be his friend, and he was going to be their friend either way, but they wanted to, they didn't want to disappoint him. It was just, I hadn't seen anything like it on my mission, and up to that point. I think the main thing I learned from him, and I think this is still like how he operates today, is like there's a huge difference when you really want to achieve something versus when you're just kind of like going through the motions. There's a huge difference in how you actually like, in how you even perform those motions. Like, everything Al did was, had like, it always came back to like his end goal, like what he was really trying to do. And what he was trying to do was like get more people to hear the gospel and hear it in a compelling way and take action on it. And so I think there's a lot of times as a missionary when I was like going about my day, I was like filling my day, and I think Preach My Gospel calls it like meaningful activities or something. I was trying to have meaningful activities filled throughout the day, but there's times when when you're filling out your planner that you're just like filling out your planner. You're like, I just need something to do, somewhere to go, so I can at least like just fill my day, like get through the day. But with him, it was never about just like filling out the day. Like, it was about like, how do we, in every single moment, how do we extract like the most value from every interaction or something. So he's like really good about always asking for referrals and stuff, because he didn't want to like waste his time. Like, he just knew that there was like something everywhere. And this is where, I think there was kind of like I guess we'd say it's like a synergy or something of things happening at different places in the mission. So we can't say that like, oh, all this like member work stuff originated out of the Irvin ward. I do think it was an important hotspot because we had, to me, it really came down to the confluence of three people, which was Douglas Yates, which is the stake president in the Paisley stake, the arrival of President Fredrick, who was really committed to making member work like the first option, like the first thing missionaries do, and Al Martin. I think those three, like together at the same, working out of Irvin Ward, like that was where a lot of like the early like case studies were taking place. And that's not to say like other people weren't doing a lot of those same activities other places, but I just think those three men like kind of nailed down a model that we were able to push out to like a lot of other people. But like when I was with Martin, it's like I kind of interrupted my thought from earlier, but he was always looking for a way to make something happen. It's almost like an athlete on the field. Like every touch of the ball or something, he's like, "How do I get this closer to the goal? How do I get this like into someone's hand or into someone's possession that they can do something with?" So like we'd be at an appointment talking to an investigator, and they'd get a phone call, and he would literally like he'd be like, "Can I talk to him? Like, let me talk to him. Let me talk." And he kind of like, and he had this way about him, right? Like, not everyone can do this, right? Because you have to have the charisma to do it. But he would like badger them into like letting him talk to their friend, and like then he'd get on the phone and be like, introduce himself and say like what he's doing and why he's on the phone, and then like they would become an investigator. Like he was just like always. He was like he had that drive. He never took like a play off, to use a sports metaphor. So that was like that just like changed the game for me. And I can't say like enough nice good things about him. And it was, yeah, I mean, not like I say, not everyone could do those things because it takes some savvy. But I think one thing that happened, I mean, sometimes people would try and imitate some of the things he would do, but not really kind of understand like how he made it work, and it would not work as well, or not work at all. And so I think some people did though realize the gap. They'd say, "Well, I can't do that now because I don't like have like that sort of social skill." But then they would like develop it and they'd work on it. And like and you think about like a mission, like a lot of it I think people tend to frame like missionary work in very physical terms of like work, like you're on your feet, you're going door to door, you're knocking, like it's physical labor. But I think with Al, it was like social labor, which is actually a lot more like the kind of jobs that most of us have now. Like, some of us might do like cold calling door to door, but that's not probably like the way most jobs work right now. It's like, how convincing can you be, uh, in a meeting or something like that? I think he got a lot of people thinking differently about how to be effective, and got people practicing skills they maybe didn't anticipate they would be working as much on a mission.
Yeah, I think the thing that Al brought to Mission, and this is in the limited interactions that I had with him, is he just had that it factor, right? You walked in the room, you knew he was there. Not necessarily because he was like overly vocal but he wanted to show people that he loved them, and by showing that love, the trust became a pretty instant thing with people, whether it was investigators, members, other missionaries. I mean, anybody he met along the way. That was kind of the way that he was going to go about it. Is I'm going to tell you who I am, why I'm here. I'm purposeful, and then beyond that, if I can make the most of my time in doing things, he just had that presence about him as he went about his mission, which was always something I admired out of him.
Yeah, and I think a big like an important part of his like toolkit was that he was really good at using like, humor and like banter. Scots love banter. They're always like, "Oh, we went out with my friends. The banter was great. Like he was really good at banter. Like, so in a sense, there's like, we didn't have a mission language, but at the same time we did. You had to learn how Scots interacted and how to take a joke and stuff. And some of that I think was just where he was from was just very similar in that way anyway. So
Right.
he was more conditioned to it, maybe more used to it. But he would show people he loved them by by maybe teasing them. But the young men, especially in like the Irvin ward, that they had never. I mean, they probably had gotten that a little bit, but they really thrived on that. Like they're like, okay, this guy is here to. He can operate at our level. Like he can say the things we can say and all that, and he gets the jokes, and he's just as good at making them. So
yeah, and that's just it. Like he had the advantage having grown up in the UK, where he understood that cultural difference already, where us Americans kind of had to adopt those things. Like I remember being a big sports fan myself growing up. I got there and I was like, I felt a little out of place because basketball and American football were not the most prominent conversation piece. And at one point, I think I was early in my mission. I might have been when I was in Peterhead, and I think I was on exchanges with one of the zone leaders early on, and he showed me like a soccer move, Elder Bautista from Sweden. And he did that soccer move, and it instantly turned these kids who had the soccer ball into like, okay, I'm interested in what you have to say because you have a skill that I like or that I long to have. You know what I mean? And I immediately went, okay, I got to get a little bit more focused on this soccer thing, which was hard for me because I didn't understand soccer. I was not a big English football fan or anything. But as I got to know that and understood the level of attention that people paid to that, it made it easier to interact with them and banter with them about who's your favorite football team, and just ask them those types of questions. And then ultimately they're like, you care? I mean, you're a guy walking around in a suit and tie, but you care about what my favorite football team is. It made a big difference.
Yeah, that cultural stuff. Yeah, I mean, it mattered. It was a way to show that you could hang. At least, I mean, and you could be a great missionary even if you weren't able to do those things. But it was a good tool if you could do it.
Sure, 100%.
Yeah, and I alluded to earlier is that like sometimes the things that Martin might do, other people might try to emulate, and it might not work as well because they didn't quite understand what he was doing when he did it. But a lot of people got there. A lot of people like took cues from that and learned. Something about Irvin as well. Like there was when I got there, we had, I think it was like Gregerson and McLean, I think. I'd be interested to, usually have those guys on. Actually, I think you said Gregerson maybe didn't want to do it, but McLean, that's someone I'd love to hear from. I think they were both there when I got there. And then McLean swapped out for Stringfellow. And I think Gregerson was training Stringfellow. And Stringfellow and I really took to each other. Like we became fast friends. So it was great to have those guys in the ward. And then Gregerson swapped out for Bachholt. And that was kind of like just me, Martin, Bachholt, and Stringfellow all just really gelled. That was like, and I think they were only there for 6 weeks, but there was a lot of energy there. There was a lot of just a lot of healthy like competition, a lot of energy. It was a good group, and Stringfellow was new. He was being trained, and like Bachholt was his trainer. Bachholt did a great job. I think Bachholt trained 2 or 3 times. But Stringfellow had like 3 trainers. He had like me and Martin and Bachholt. He was getting inundated with do this, and like we did not give him like a second to, but we could tell that he was up to it. He could take it. So That was a fun experience to kind of like just like put him through the fire. And then in Irvin, I haven't even got to the members yet. Just amazing cast of members in that ward. There was Jack Wild, his family. I think they had like 7 kids. They helped us so much. Like we were at their house all the time. They were always down for joint teaches. The 2 teenage sons, we were taking them out just all the time, and they were great missionaries. And they went on missions themselves, and I think they even went to the same mission, and I think they were even companions, which was crazy. But then they were they were kind of like the central hub of all activity in the ward. We had a lot of success with youth there, and they were, they had all the youth in their house and taught the gospel to many youth in the area. And then so that was Jack Wild. His brother David Wild was also in the ward, and he was the ward mission leader. He's this brilliant guy, this brilliant musician, and just like this really, really smart guy, really fun to talk to. Also very, very helpful. And his son and stuff would come out on joint teaches too. We had the youth just incredibly engaged there. We were really lucky just to go into that situation with all these youth who were capable of helping and whose parents really wanted them to help. So they would make sure it happened. And then the President Yates, his family was there, and he had like 5 or 6 kids, and they were all helpful. And it was just crazy. It's how many people there that wanted to help us and that were good at it. And then there was this guy, Donald Muir. Loved Donald Muir. Just that he was a somewhat recent convert. I mean, maybe of 5 or 10 years or something, but he was in the bishopric, just insane energy. He had a little bit of flash. He liked to drive, some flashy cars, and he liked bright colored ties and suits and stuff. And but he was always down for a joint teach, always down for hosting people. Don, just amazing guy. Still, keep in contact with him a little bit. I should probably reach out more often. And then the bishop, this guy Billy Govins, he was amazing. His wife had brought him into the church, and super energetic. He was like the definition of like a guy from Ayrshire, just a guy from that part of Scotland. Very intense, very like it's kind of, you see why like Al Martin worked so well here, because like all these people were just like they were all about the banter, and like I'll say I could take it. I don't know. Maybe they probably thought I was just like a dork, but Al could definitely take it, and he could definitely give it, and they just like really liked him. So we were kind of, we were very much ingratiated into the ward. It was awesome. Our main investigator story there was this family, the Adair family, who their father was kind of he had I think a brain cancer, really terrible story. But even before, actually, I think before the brain cancer diagnosis, they had actually gotten interested in the church, or at least one of the daughters had, the daughter Hannah, and she was like 13 or something, but I can't remember how, she maybe met through friends or something, had learned about the church, and so we were teaching her. And then her sister got involved, and then their father, his health started to decline, and I think we got kind of close to the father, but then he passed away. And then a few months later, I think the mother, Kathleen, she got interested and wanted to learn more about what her daughters had been learning, and so ultimately all 3 of them ended up being baptized. That was a great story there. We loved working with them. And like, yeah, all the they were sourced through members. All the teaching happened in members' homes or with members present. Just really good example of how it can work. We had a couple other investigators there, but those were kind of the main ones. The Adair family. I mean, we had actually a ton of other people we were working with, but yeah, the Adairs are kind of the main thing. I think Martin mentioned this, but for a couple weeks we had Barber with us. That was really fun. It was like his last couple weeks on a mission, I think. There was like just an odd number or something, so they just sent them out to us. And Barber had worked very hard. He'd been a great missionary. He was very tired, so we let him rest. We would go and do stuff, and sometimes he'd come, sometimes he wouldn't. Good times though. I mean, we loved having him, and we were happy to be there when he ended his mission. Let's see. And also, so Bachholt and Stringfell, we loved having them there, but then they got whitewashed out by Senior Sisters. They changed that area to be Senior Sisters. So Siegmiller and Lyons. And unfortunately, as you know, Bonnie Siegmiller passed away a couple months ago. But they were great. Like, they were so cool to have. They they went to great lengths to take care of us, and to just look out for us. And it was really funny because sometimes sometimes they'd have to like kind of tell us off to just be like, you guys are kind of annoying us, like don't ask us to do so much or something. It was, but I mean, they're well within their, like, they were being very reasonable. We would just like call them at like 10 or something. They're like, we've been asleep for like 2 hours. Like, why are you calling us? Because these were Senior Sisters.
Right.
But yeah, we really liked working with them. They were a huge asset to the ward. I'm trying to think of, let's see. So
how long in duration were you and Al together in Irvin?
I think it was 1, 2, 3, 6 months in Irvin together, and then I left. 6 weeks I was with Stanley, Leor Stanley. Stanley's a really cool guy, really interesting guy. Really, he's Canadian, but he's not just Canadian. He's like, I don't want to get it wrong, but I think he was also like Israeli and Mexican. Like, he had all 3 passports or something. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but maybe the Mexican
Most
government
countries allow that.
He's the trifecta.
Yeah,
Not the United States, but
yeah. So he'll have to come on and clarify how many nationalities he actually has. But I think he's in Canada now. But he's like, I see him on Facebook. He's like an entrepreneur. He's living in the wilderness, and I think he does like some healthcare business or something. He seems like he's got a great life. But yeah, great, really diligent guy, very extremely sincere, like one of the most sincere people you'll ever meet. Just very concerned about doing the right thing. He, so I was working with him in the office, and I was only with him for 6 weeks. And like, also, I think Pilkington was kind of there for like the first week of that or something, as kind of like a transition thing. But so Stanley he was pretty quiet, and he saved his fire, right? He didn't take too many shots, but when he did have to like tell someone off, it was pretty powerful, because it's like, this guy doesn't say something unless something really, really needs to be said. And I remember he told off another missionary who was in his group, or maybe it wasn't his group, but someone who was like kind of older in the mission. And he's just like, he laid into him. He's like, you haven't done kind of what you promised you'd do when we got here, sort of thing. And oh man, that's like, I felt bad. Like, but he was right. But like, it was like coming from him, because he was very selective with like that sort of thing. He wasn't known for just going around and like saying that stuff. It was very powerful, and it was, I think it like, and that other person is someone who I think who had been corrected before and didn't necessarily always like receive that correction, but when it came from Elder Stanley, like it meant something, and it hurt. Like, it hurt him in the right way. Like, it got through.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. And then so yeah, then he went home. I was only there, only for 6 weeks. That flies by, especially when you're toward the end of your mission. I think I had 3 transfers left, and then Martin came into the office as well. And I think what mostly our work there was about implementing like scaling some of the things that had worked in Irvine and other places and scaling it across the whole mission. They're trying to, and yeah, we had a really good a good time. It comes back to that thing about like stuff being fun, and obviously not everyone's going to end up like living in the mission home, which is a weird place to be, and everything, there's always something like crazy happening. We were there with there's office elders and stuff. I think Elder Money was in there. I don't know if you guys knew him.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll say it. Money was a character, crazy guy.
Yes, he was.
he should come on. He should come on and tell some of his stories. He would give us such a hard time. He was always just like, he called Al and I mission tourists. He's like, oh, like every time we'd get back, like we'd drive from like Inverness to Edinburgh, and he'd be like, oh, look, it's the mission tourists. Look who's finally back. Like, have fun on your tourism. He loved to give us a hard time, and I think we love to give him a hard time. It was like adversarial, but also very fun. He was just an interesting guy. I would be fascinated to hear his take on his experience. He might not like me very much, but in a kind of crazy turn of events, I liked him quite a bit. It's just not a conventional friendship.
I can agree to that. I can't remember where I served around him, but he was pretty new, and some of the things coming out of his mouth, I was like, I don't quite get you yet, and I didn't. I wasn't around him enough to get him just enough. But yeah, that was something that was funny.
I looked him up on Facebook just now before this, actually, and he was driving a Tesla going 150. So, still got that dog in him.
His last name's Money. He's supposed to be doing crazy stuff like that.
Yeah,
big money man.
Yeah, he's having fun. That's for sure. Yeah. So I think Elder Oaks came during this time. So I think President Fredrick drove him around. But we were able to spend some time with then Elder Oaks, now President Oaks. That was fun. I mean, President Fredrick had us teach him a lesson, like do one of the missionary lessons, like a 10-minute like member lesson. Man, that was nerve-wracking.
I could only imagine.
Yeah, I think our lesson went okay. I think he liked it. I think he accepted everything we taught. So at least we didn't teach anything wrong.
It's too funny.
He didn't correct us, so I mean, I'll take that as a win.
Yeah.
And I remember his wife. I remember he like went for a second piece of cake, and she's like put her hand on his hand. She's like, no, like she's like, Dallin, no.
Oh, watch your figure.
Yeah,
that's what good wives do.
Yeah, I mean, that was, she was right. Yeah, this is a kind of a really nerdy thing, but it's something I think made a big difference. And maybe no one remembers it. Maybe they don't think it mattered, but I think it totally changed things for a bunch of people. When we got to the mission home, we were reading Preach My Gospel really closely, and we saw that, like Alistair and I, we saw that the way numbers were reported, historically, like each companionship would call the district leader. The district leader would write down all the numbers. District leader would call the zone leaders and send all the numbers to the zone leaders. Zone leaders would call the APs and send all the numbers to the APs. But they would get each like companionship specific numbers, right? So like on numbers night, like the AP could say like, oh, Hewlett and Marsh had this many lessons this week. But we were reading Preach My Gospel, and it actually doesn't say to do it that way. It just says that like the district leader should pass up the district numbers, and the zone leader should just pass the zone numbers. And so we're like, well, that would save a lot of time. Like people don't have to sit there on the phone, like reading all these numbers off. And it's like, it provides less granularity to the mission president. But we changed it because President Fredrick was really like, it was really important to him to, just like follow preach my gospel as closely as possible. So like he told us, like, whenever we find anything that we thought we weren't doing it like the preach my gospel way, just tell him and we'd talk about changing it. So we changed the way the numbers were reported. And I think what happened is, if you're a district leader in that scenario, you have to call the zone leaders and report just your district numbers. So you couldn't say, me, the district leader, I had great numbers, but everyone else had bad numbers. That's why my district numbers are bad. Instead, he'd just say, like, the district has bad numbers. And so, like, the district leader then provided this more like this environment where he had to lead. Like, he had to actually, he's like, okay, who is struggling? And like, what do I have to do to help them not struggle? Like, so it really reframed like the way a lot of these leadership roles approach their leadership. Like they, maybe people would say like, no, I remember this, it didn't make a difference, but I think it really did. Like, and then the zone leaders too. The zone leaders would be like, why are my zone numbers so bad? Like, who do I have to help? And like, who do I have to develop? Who do I have to train more? Who do I have to work more with? Like, I think it just changed the way they thought. And maybe people disagree, but I thought that was kind of a thing that mattered. Because you couldn't just like skate by just saying like, well, at least my numbers are good. I can't tell you why my zone is so bad, but at least my numbers are good.
That's better prep for life too, because you don't, like, in your family or if you're leading at work, it's not individual numbers, it's the team.
Yeah. Let me see if I had any other good stuff. And there was the Elder Oaks visit. There was also Elder Vriens. He, I think, was from like Uruguay. He came to visit. That was really cool. Him and his wife asked to go to they wanted to see like a castle. So we took him, I think, to Glamis Castle. That was really nice. I mean, both Martin and I were like, despite what like Ryan Money would say, we were not tourists. Like, we didn't know where anything was. Like, when I went back with my wife, she's like, what should we see? I'm like, you want to see some ugly apartments? Like, I don't know stuff. There's like Dun Otter, because I saw that from the road, so I know where that is. But like, but yeah. So we took Elder Vriens to a castle or palace, because that was the only way we would have ended up at a palace. Martin mentioned this, but Big Z, Elder Zacharias, he moved into the mission home while we were there. That was fun. It was, similar to the situation with Ryan Money. Like, it was almost at times it was like, and I genuinely liked it. Like, it was like a sitcom. Like, there was just like every day there was just like a new storyline. It was like, what's going on? Like, but it was fun. Yeah. When actually regarding Sister Siegmiller, I remember actually her son and daughter-in-law came to pick her up. And that was another time where we like had to be like tour guides. And they're like, show us the cool stuff around Edinburgh. And we're like, okay. And we like took them to, what was that? Like, there's that place where the Da Vinci Code ends. I can't remember. Yeah, we took them to Roslyn, and yeah, that was cool. And regarding the Da Vinci Code, did you guys remember, like, do you remember like talking to people on their doorsteps, and they'd be like, well, what about the Da Vinci Code?
I remember getting that a few times.
You'd be like, well, what about it? Like,
that's exactly what I would say. What about it? What does that mean?
They'd ask about Dan Brown like he was another author of the Bible or something.
Yeah. Well, and like the Da Vinci Code, even if it was like vaguely true, is like, doesn't really change anything about what we're saying. But people, I must have been asked about the Da Vinci Code like 100 times.
It's like people asking if National Treasure is real.
Yeah,
with Nicolas Cage.
It is, of course, real.
Yes, of course,
100%.
And on the National Treasure and Da Vinci Code thing, I think some people have talked about John Ryan Park. Did you guys know him?
Oh, yeah.
Hamilton. Yeah,
I served in Hamilton for 6 weeks. I love John.
Yeah, and I only knew him through Martin, but he made jewelry for the Masons. And one time he took Martin and I to the lodge in Kilwinning. I think it was Kilwinning. It's like one of the oldest lodges in the world, or oldest in Scotland or something, or oldest in Europe, I think, something like that. He took us there, and not to go in, he just like took us to see it. And we're standing outside, and some guy comes up to him, and they have this like weird coded conversation. I guess just using like Masonic lingo or something. And then they like exchanged these like their handshakes. I don't know. It was at the time in 2007 or whatever, Da Vinci Code and like the Masonic stuff. There was a lot of excitement about all that stuff. So me and Martin and I were like, wow, we got to witness some really cool Masonic dealings. And actually, do you remember that? There was that senior missionary, I think Gil Scharf or something. Did you ever meet him?
I don't remember that name.
I think he was doing like family history, but he was like this really smart academic guy, and he'd written a book about like Masonic ties to the church or something like that. But it was like a confluence. I don't know why. Like O'Brien could tell you more about it. Like it was just this thing that kept coming up throughout my 2 years.
Was he one of the senior couples that was based in Edinburgh doing family history? Is that how you knew him? Because I remember they came in later in my time in the mission, and I was like, okay, great. Well, I'll never see those people because I was up north for the rest of the mission.
Yeah, I think he was, and I think they had, or he was like public affairs or something. I don't know, but he.
Oh, okay.
I remember those like family history people. Didn't they basically just like go to a dungeon every day and like look at microfilm or so? Their life sounded pretty rough.
I thought it sounded pretty cool. Going like 4 hours a day, they'd go and take pictures of the old records.
It was like the National Archive. It was the National Archive,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and churches like the old Bibles.
Yeah, I think
right.
A lot of the men liked it, but some of their wives were like going crazy. But the men were like, "This is what I saved up for, to scan Bibles." And the women were like, I thought I was gonna see like Buckingham Palace or something.
Where's the royal coach? Oh gosh, that's too funny.
Yeah, so I think that brings me to like the end of my time. There's a lot of eventful stuff, but let me see if I have these notes. They're kind of like scattered, but I meant to lead off with this, but I think what you guys are doing is really cool, because there's not a lot of places for. So I feel like a lot of missionaries come home and people don't really care about their stories, because it kind of, I don't know, it's just sort of like, oh, mission stories, like don't tell me your mission story. It's like vacation pictures, it's like kind of a joke. Like people don't want to see your vacation pictures.
Yeah,
it's like everyone's like, all the mission stories are the same. We don't want to hear them. But
Jeez.
I think they are important. I think like this oral history stuff is really cool. And I think there's another element to this, which is like there's a big like fraternity deficit. Like there's just like not, people don't, it's hard to keep in contact. People move around a lot. People switch jobs a lot. And, you had all these like important interactions, all these like really quality bonds were formed on the mission. And then you kind of like go your separate ways. And it's like, it's good. I think what you guys are doing is you're bringing a lot of that back. Like, it's caused a lot of people like me to reach out to people. And it's like, yeah, I need to be keeping in touch with these people. I had hoped too, like coming out of a mission, like, and there's still time for this, but it's like you meet all these really cool people. And it's like, oh, I should like, start a business with that guy, like, or something like that. And it's like, the missions are a very valuable like fraternity. And I know there's sisters there, of course, too. I don't want to discount that, but like, and yeah, it's just that, I think a lot of us, myself, like most of all, could have done more to, keep in contact with and create more things, create more like meaningful experiences and stuff out of these relationships. I salute what you guys have done here. It's really cool.
Thank you.
Well, Thank you. Yeah, it's been a big part of it too. Just even Zach and I probably didn't talk for 10 years or see each
Yeah.
other a lot.
Yeah.
But now, back to being good friends, and we talk all the time just through this.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you brought up a good point, Richard. It has everything to do with the season of life that we were in, where it's go to school, get married, have I bet if we tabulated all the children that have been born since we all came home from our missions to now, there's got to be hundreds of kids. And, for that to kind of be a season of life where we're so focused on the growth and sustaining of our families that I guess we have reason to have stepped away from each other for a period of time. But now our children are becoming a little bit older and a little bit more self-sufficient. And, we talk to some people who have, 16, 17-year-old kids, and you're like, are we really that old?
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
But and then the other realization that we had too in our conversation with President and Sister Vriens, it's like how many of those senior couples or senior sisters that were on the mission can truly recall things well enough to remember some of the memories of that mission. And we haven't had many of them on, but there are more that will come, I'm sure of it. But you're right. It's an opportunity for us to kind of make this as an oral history, like you said, where we can all go back. I mean, Brady Hess mentioned it, share it with our kids when they're old enough to understand that we went on a mission and we went to Scotland, and, why these things are important to us, why we have flags hanging up in our home that is not the United States of America or whatever, those are all key things that we can share with people as we move forward. And like you said, the individual conversations that we're having too are really key when somebody shares that on social media, and friends and family are like, I've never heard these stories. Well, yeah, of course. You didn't sit down at my homecoming and say, let me tell you about what the heck I did for 2 years, So,
Yeah.
we appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool thing. I think it's like creating a lot of value, social value, and probably other forms of value too. And I bet and I know that people are probably all over the map in terms of like what they're doing now in relation to the church, but I bet these conversations have probably helped some people reconnect with the church in ways that are positive. So like I hope that's the case, and I bet it is the case.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, Jack and I have talked about this many times, but we have literally just dipped our toes in the water of this thing. It's unbelievable. Looking at the list of people that you rattled off as your companions, we have talked to 3 of them, and you still have a pretty lengthy list of people that we're looking forward to talking to.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a list of a bunch more too.
Sweet.
I'm going to jump into that list real quick. So, people I want to hear from, I'd love to hear from Farnsworth. So something interesting about Farnsworth is that he's actually the bishop of my parents' ward, the ward I grew up in. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, he's my parents' bishop right now. Blake Farnsworth.
He's coming. Blake, he's got to finish his tithing settlement, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Declaration. Declaration. You don't want to misbrand it here.
As soon as my parents declare their tithing, he can come on your show.
That's right.
That's pretty small world. That's crazy. Yeah, he will be on.
You're like, here's my list. I mean, I made this list partly before you talked to some of these people. So you got Martin already. You got O'Brien already. If there was a way, I'd love to hear a Martin like some more, because Martin had I think he went really. His episode was like an hour. He's got more stuff, but maybe he could come on in some other circumstance sometime.
For sure, we'd love to have him back on. Part 2, Al. Come on the podcast.
Stringfellow, he's a hard guy to get a hold of. I consider him among my very good friends, but as is the case with many great men in our age, I can text him every month for a year, and I won't necessarily hear back. But I know that's because he's so busy doing important things, and not because he doesn't like me. I'd love to have. You got to get Stringfellow on though. That'd be good if he reads his text or something. Got to have Oliver on. I'd love to hear Oliver. Let's see. You already had McCabe, but shout out to McCabe. Bachholt. I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this. Bachholt, I think, has got some health challenges lately. But I would love to hear him if he feels well enough to like do this. But he is he was a great missionary and just a great dude. Hardy. I would like pay money to hear Hardy tell his stories. Hardy's like a great storyteller and also gets himself in crazy situations and stuff. So he would be a really good one.
I served in a tripanionship with him, and I have his phone number, and we've texted a little bit, but I haven't pinned down a time with him yet. So I need to call him. That's like my next task.
Yeah, I'll tell him too. I talk to him sometimes. We've talked recently. He's like just as like funny as ever.
Oh man, love Ren.
Gotta get Bird. Someone I really love is Jansen.
Oh yeah, Elder Jansen.
Yeah, I would love to hear from Jansen. When my wife and I lived in Europe, we went to Denmark, and he let us stay at his house, or his mom's house, and like they just like took us in like family. They had these like big huge dogs, Rhodesian Ridgebacks.
Nice. That suits him.
Yeah, man, his family, like really cool guys. Like you've never been in a room with like so many manly guys. Like, oh man, every one of those dudes could have just wasted me.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, and then McLeod. Everyone says McLeod. If you can get him on, you got to get him on.
I've reached out. He's not responded with any sort of commitment. So
yeah,
he's responded, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, tell him you can pay him in Canadian dollars.
Yes.
Canucci. I'd love to hear from everyone from my group. So Canucci was in my group. I'd love to hear from him. Evans was in my group. Love to hear from him. You already got the poll. He was in my group. Borders. He was in my group. He is a great guy. Love to hear from him.
We've reached out to Lyle, and he's just got a crazy schedule, but he's looking at next year.
Okay. And then there's Stanley, who he might be like off grid or something. I don't know, but hiding from like the Mexican government. I don't know, but he was really cool. You should have him on. And then when I was in Irvin, they talked all the time about this guy, Elder Olson. I don't know who he was, but if you guys have heard of Elder Olson, I think he was a Wilkinson era person. But if someone listening to this knows who Elder Olson is, I'd like to hear about him, because in Irvin, they like all remember this Olson guy, and he was like really important, and he's kind of a legend. And I'd just like to know like what his thing was, his story was.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That would be cool, because we do have some listeners that are older than Jack in the mission that may be able to help us marry the pieces there. That's cool.
Yeah. One thing, like, I'll just jump in. I mean, you guys maybe want to get going or something, but I'm just going to keep going. You guys normally ask about like President Vriens and President Fredrick and stuff. So
yeah, you beat us to the question, Rich.
Yeah,
come on.
Well, I'll just jump right into it. I mean, like I said, I'm a super fan. I've heard all the episodes. I had each one exactly 1 year, I think, basically. So
that makes sense. Yep.
Yeah, so President Vriens, and I've been kind of all over the place here tonight, but I mentioned like that when I was in Bridge of Dawn, I learned that my brother was sick again, and unfortunately, he did pass away a few months later when I was in Iowa. And so I'll always be grateful to President Vriens, because he helped me through that really awful time. And he was, just he was a great source of comfort. I was, the last conversation I ever had with my brother was in President Vriens' office. I went down there one day. I think I was with Elder Oliver. So we went down there and we, used his phone, used his office, and he gave me a blessing. It just, any mission president would have done that, of course, but there was a power to his blessing and to that interaction with him, and it was, I'll never forget it. And and other than that, honestly, President Vriens, I think he and I had a silent understanding as well that sort of he was kind of like, you're the next guy's guy, because I don't know that you and I connect really. I think, I mentioned that I was that when I was being trained, I was maybe kind of not the easiest person to train, because I was like writing all these letters and stuff to President Vriens, and I was just like, here's like my 10 ideas of things we could do differently. And he's just like, you just got here. Stop doing that. Stop sending me stuff like this. Like, just like work hard, do your scripture mastery. What do they call it? Like, it was not scripture mastery, but
Scriptorium.
Do the scriptorium program.
Certification of your lessons too, right?
Yeah. And so it's like, and so it was kind of like that. And then like when I think he kind of knew like, you're maybe more of a, you're maybe going to be more of a fit for whoever comes after me, and then that's going to be your midpoint. So, and I think we kind of had that understanding, and we knew some people back in Salt Lake, knew some people that knew President Vriens, and that's kind of what I learned through back channels. It's sort of like, that yeah, but I I thought he was great, and then President Fredrick came in, and I think the main like difference there for me was because President Fredrick, probably because he's so new. Like, one thing I've heard people on this podcast kind of compare Vriens and Fredrick, but it's like what they're really comparing is Vriens in year 3 to Fredrick in year 1, and it's like almost like athletes or something. Like, you can't really, if you're going to compare like LeBron and MJ, it's going to be, you should compare them at the same points in their career, sort of thing. And it's like a first year mission president is just going to be, he's going to be quite different than how he's going to be in his third year. But Fredrick coming in very much with like the experimentation mindset. He like wanted to try new things, and that's kind of where I was always at. I always wanted to try a lot of stuff. Like, so he was President Fredrick, and this is, I think pretty much everyone would agree with this. He was just very comfortable doing things that maybe seemed counterintuitive or seemed like a lot of people would be like, oh, I went to this area without a car, and it's a big area. So like the logic is like, well, if you're in a big area, you should have a car. And President Fredrick was just like, that's not the same logic I'm going to use. Like, my logic's going to have something to do more with like population density, or like what's going on there at the moment, or how supportive the war is and stuff like that. So he was so comfortable just like doing things that people thought were maybe not smart, but he didn't really care, because he wanted to try things. And I think it like paid off in the sense that people, here's an interesting thing. And I know that like Martin loves this story, and probably quite a few other people, but like remember this too. But I think we were at a zone conference, and President Yates from the Paisley Stake was a guest speaker, and he was talking about like how to boost numbers, like how to get more numbers. And obviously when you talking about numbers, someone is going to say like, oh, but you only care about the numbers. And someone raised their hand. They're like, it sounds like you only care about the numbers. And he's like, and I won't use this person's name, but we'll just say, let's say Anderson. It wasn't Anderson, but he's like, Elder Anderson, you're a number. Everyone's a number. That guy's a number. That guy's a number. I'm a number. Everyone's a number. Like, you're introducing people to the gospel. It is kind of about numbers. Like, that matters. So you're going to get a membership number. We want the most people possible to have a chance to hear the gospel and to feel the Spirit. Like, so, you know, that's kind of like where I was at on like the issue of like, oh, it's only about numbers. Well, it's not like only about numbers, but numbers obviously are going to come like part of the equation. Like, you got to communicate this stuff somehow. So, so President Fredrick he was also a numbers, like, he was a numbers guy. Like, he was literally like a math guy. Like, he was a math major in college, I think. They ran a large business that was like a distribution business, I think, for dynamite. And it's like logistics and numbers, right? That was the name of the game. So he was, and you know, President Vriens probably had more of that. Like, he was running a successful business as well, but it was probably more of and I know what business it was, but it was probably more of a relationships business, like a smaller scale relationships business and stuff like that. So you can kind of see differences, maybe how they were a little different. I think President Fredrick was more of a big scale type thinker. You know, he's thinking of shipping containers and pallets and trucks, and President Vriens was probably more about, you know, like, how do I manage these maybe smaller relationships or something. But obviously both huge successful men, so just different kinds of businesses.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought behind it. Like you said, you know, President Vriens was in the stretch run, where President Fredrick, I remember being in leadership conferences, and he looked like he was just a deer in the headlights for the first few months. And I don't blame him. I mean, we all know his story. He was going on a senior mission with his wife, and then got elevated to be a mission president. You know, that had to be a huge shock to the system when that was like, hey, by the way, we think you should do an extra year and run the show.
Yeah,
you know?
He was really thrown into it, but like I was saying earlier, I do think it was like just a perfect confluence of personalities, at least, you know. And I don't know totally, you know, I hear bits and pieces of it, like from your interviews, of where things went after, but at least for that first year, I felt like, I'll come back to it, you know, President Yates of Paisley, President Fredrick, and Alistair Martin. So I think those three personalities, like, it really was like kind of a tipping point, I think.
It's amazing. Well, Richard, we really appreciate you. Is there any other favorite memories of Sister Vriens and Sister Fredrick that you want to mention while we're still talking about them?
You know, I think one time I can say I definitely got in trouble with Sister Fredrick. That's for sure. Just, you know, when living in the mission home, just like, I don't remember what we were doing, but goofing around, and we did the wrong thing. That's for sure. And I regret doing that. And I remember, like, President Fredrick was kind of in the background, and, like, we like met eyes, and he's just like, "Yep, you did it. Like, you screwed up." Like, she was. I think a lot of people have said she was like not that similar to Sister Vriens, but I don't know. I think they were pretty similar. They both like were very clear. They both spoke their mind without like much hesitation. They both liked what they liked and had like a very clear expectations of like behavior for the young men and women around them and stuff. So I think they're actually quite similar. I mean, they're obviously very different personalities, but and kind of how they interface with the missionaries, pretty close. I'd say President Fredrick and President Vriens are maybe more different, but both very loving and thoughtful men.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Anything else from your notes, Richard?
Yeah, I'll do one last thing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll do one last thing. So we'll get into the thing that's known as hammer time, just because it's come up on so many episodes. So regarding hammer time, I would say I think the origin in some ways was me and Martin. I don't know if other people want to take credit, I won't stop them, but a lot of it came, I think, from that era with Bachholt, Stringfell, Martin, and I in the same place at the same time. And then also, McCabe was in Ayr, just south of us. And so like Stringfell, Bachholt, and McCabe, and me and Martin were all very, very comfortable. Like, I'd call it kind of like banter, but like all very comfortable with that very direct approach to like, like I'll say like encouragement or spot corrections or something like that. And with the right people, I would say it was for certain people, like someone like a Hardy, or a Jansen. That was the kind of approach that they kind of thrived on because, and maybe it's because they had come from like, like Jansen was like a bodybuilder,
Mhm.
Hardy was a very competitive athlete in a couple different sports. McKay was a competitive athlete. And maybe they were more, maybe, I don't know. I don't want to say it's like a sports thing, but they, maybe from those environments or whatever, they were just comfortable with that kind of heat. And it didn't mean anything like with Martin was like, he gave him a hard time about something. They, I think, would almost see it as like I'm in his inner circle because like the fact that he would give me that correction so bluntly is like shows that he's just like he and I are tight. And where it went wrong, or like where it was harder, is when maybe people who weren't as like charismatic as Martin would try and do similar type of correcting, and it's like, that didn't work as well, or something. Or it's like, yeah, it's where it's. I mean, some of the stuff that I've heard, and most examples are things I was not like aware. Most of the examples I've heard from your episodes are not things I was like involved in or aware of. And sometimes the places I'm like, I don't know who that would even be, but I do feel bad if like some missionary who's like 18 months younger than like me or something was just like hearing about like things that Martin and I were doing, that like I should do that too. And then they do it and it's maybe not quite like what they thought it was supposed to be or something. But I think that stuff only works with the right people. It only works if there's like some sort of relationship there. So that was that was my main, I guess, the way I would have done it differently or something is I would have strongly discouraged just people from just generally doing it without having like the strong like connective tissue with who they're doing it to. That's kind of my main takeaway from hearing about people's experiences with it.
I think one of the first things we heard about you and Martin was that you called some of those that you were leading when you were zone leaders and told them no more chapping. And to me, coming from an older era of missionary work, not that much older, but like chapping was life.
Yeah.
So to get a call to say no more chapping, it just seems like super radical, right? But
Yeah, and
is the people you were dealing with and the leadership that you had supporting you there that makes sense.
yeah, certain things have to be in place for like a new model to actually work. And like we were trying to do something that was significantly different, like and like kind of like this is kind of like the stuff I do now for work. Like I'll say like change management. Like changing a large organization is hard. It's easier on the mission than in like in the government or private sector or something, because a mission's a lot more like it's smaller time frames and there's a more direct line. Like if the mission president says do something, you just kind of do it. But yeah, changing a big organization the way they operate is really hard. Lots of growing pains in doing something like that. And yeah, going to like a member first approach, some of I think what gets called hammer time was the growing pains of like helping people. Like I'll say helping people. Some people who felt hurt would probably not like the term helping, but like I've made a couple references to like charisma and stuff like that. It's like if you're going to go from knocking doors all day to doing member work all day, like certain parts of your game have to be dramatically improved. So like member work was easier in some ways because you're not like standing in the rain all day getting rejected, but it was harder in other ways because it's like you got to have the spirit with you maybe more, you got to be more charming, you got to be more persuasive. You have to really I mean, I think this is most people, like when they come home from a mission, I've definitely had this experience where I've like looked around and I've been like, I don't know if like I would trust these missionaries with good contact. Like I don't know, um, and so yeah, if we were going to ask people to do like member work first, they had to probably be a little better. And I think that was where a lot of the stuff came from. But I think a lot of people were definitely unfairly treated, and a lot of things were not handled as nicely as they could have been. And I think that comes down to often like knowing who you're working with, and like I could tell Hardy certain things because he's been out a long time and he's this personality. But someone who's been out 3 months or something like that, I can't say the same thing to that person because it's not the same. They just don't know. They haven't been around as long or whatever. So I don't know if that's making sense, but basically, know your audience.
That's good insight though, because you're right. It has everything to do with how someone's going to receive something, and depending on their upbringing or their whatever their competitive juices are or whatever, it could
Yeah,
drive someone, or it could put them in a place where they're like, I absolutely hate this. So and some people have used the word polarizing, and I can understand how that is the case because it would be very different.
yeah, and on the idea of like upbringing, like I told that resonates with me because it's like I remember getting there and it's like, oh, I mean, I was aware of this already, but it really drove home the fact that like not everyone had the same upbringing, and like
Right.
well, some people, you get that they get on the mission and it's kind of obvious that they don't really know that much about the church. Like they found themselves on a mission, but they don't necessarily know that much. So they're like their commitment, they might be very committed, but they maybe well just whatever. I mean, you get the point. Like they're coming from all over, and so
It's a diverse group. That's part of the beauty of it too.
Right. We learned something from each other because we all came from different places, or we'd put our foot in our mouths and then learn the hard way.
yeah. And it's like maybe a little cliche, but it's like there are people, and I felt this way. Like there are people who, like I mentioned, this guy John McIntosh in Perth. Like I really felt like I was like someone who and other people could have taught him too, but I really felt like I was there to teach him. And like we are there. There's certain people we're just gonna connect with, be it like an investigator or other missionaries or something like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
True in life and true on the mission.
That's all I had on the hammer time thing. I think I could go longer, but I think I said the most important parts.
Okay. Any other topics we need to hit for you?
No, I think we hit all the stuff that was in my notes. Thanks for doing this, guys.
Well, one thing you can do for us, Richard, as we
Yeah.
move forward is just be an advocate. I'm sure you already have, but as you reach out to these people that you're like, I need to get back in touch or be more in touch, certainly let them know that we'd love to hear from them. We'd love to have them on the podcast and just have one of these reminiscent conversations that truly opens the vault, like Jack and I have talked about a few times.
Yeah, I'll definitely any guys that I can help get to come on, I will nudge them because I'm selfishly I want to hear their stories. I want to hear their take.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. Well, We
Thank you,
we-
Richard.
we appreciate you staying up late with us.
No problem. It was fun.
All right, brother. We love you.
Thanks. We'll talk to you maybe again. We'll see.
Absolutely. We will certainly talk again.
All right. Later, guys.
Thanks, Richard.
Night.